In the year 615 AD, the Roman Empire was in peril. The wars it was fighting had massively reduced its territory and emptied its resources. Perhaps Emperor Heraclius would oversee the collapse of the Roman world. As enemy invasions depleted tax revenue, drastic measures were taken to finance the costs of war. The church's valuable metals were requisitioned and used to mint a new kind of silver coin called the hexagram. On each coin were the words, "May God help the Romans." Order had to be restored in Italy. Eleutherius was elected the new exarch and executed those implicated in the death of his predecessor, John. The rebellion in Naples was crushed, and a tribute was paid to the Lombards. These actions stabilized the exarchate. Like a rock standing on the coastline, Thessalonica endured repeated waves of Slavic attacks. On this occasion, the Avars joined forces, bringing siege engines to intensify the assaults. The emperor was in no position to provide assistance, but the resilient defenders managed to withstand the onslaught, eventually paying the invaders to leave. This would break the Slavic will to take the city for the next 60 years. Persian commander Shahrbaraz began the invasion of the empire's breadbasket, Egypt. The locals, being Monophysites, did not put much effort in the defense. Soon, Alexandria was besieged. As Heraclius had done several years earlier, an exarch took advantage of the emperor's difficulties to rebel. However, before he could be crowned emperor in Rome, Eleutherius was killed by his own soldiers. Despite his troubled reign, it was the only instance of a rebellion against Heraclius. Alexandria had now fallen, compelling Nicetas to retreat to Constantinople. There, the loss of Egypt meant that Heraclius was forced to terminate the government-provided grain dole for the population. The catastrophic developments persisted with the onset of a fresh new wave of plague that swept through the empire. Heraclius briefly contemplated relocating the capital to Carthage, yet Sergius managed to dissuade him from this course of action. Anatolia was a contested province, continuously attacked by Persian armies. While cities were repeatedly sacked, the conquests proved to be temporary in nature. In the year 620, it was the turn of the strategically located city of Ancyra to fall. The frontier between the two empires remained porous, allowing spies and refugees to circulate freely. At this point in the war, Heraclius was preparing for an upcoming military campaign, gathering intelligence and studying military manuals, including, most probably, the famous Strategicon. In 622, Heraclius marched east, gathering his remaining armies in Anatolia. There, he conducted military training and made religious speeches in front of the troops. Shahrbaraz operated in the area. Heraclius took action and outmaneuvered his opponent. By autumn, the Romans had won their first significant victory of the war, a welcome improvement for the army's morale. As the war reached the imperial inner territory, not even the Aegean islands was safe. Crete and Rhodes were attacked by Slavs and Persians respectively. For their part, the Avars needed to be placated before Heraclius could resume his campaigns. However, a diplomatic encounter between the emperor and the Kagan turned into a treacherous ambush, from which Heraclius narrowly escaped. The Avars penetrated the Anastasian walls, ravaged the area, took tens of thousands of prisoners, but did not attack Constantinople itself. In the end, both sides settled for a fragile peace treaty for which the government paid 200,000 solidi. The last Roman-held cities in Spania fell to the Goths. As remaining imperial troops evacuated the province, 7 decades of Eastern Roman presence on the peninsula were at an end. In April 624, Heraclius embarked on a new campaign, entrusting Constantinople to a regency council. The Empress Martina was said to accompany her husband on this endeavor. The first milestone was Caesarea. There, the emperor released possibly fabricated letters from Khosrow, rejecting Heraclius' call for peace and insulting Jesus Christ. Once more, the intention was to galvanize the troops against the enemy. The Roman army forced its way through Armenia, reaching Persia in the summer. Khosrow himself was in the area with a large army. He retreated south after a minor engagement. Heraclius took Ganzak and destroyed its Zoroastrian holy site. The warrior emperor then went north to winter in Albania. There, he allied with parts of the local elite and released his Persian prisoners of war. Among the allies Heraclius sought to acquire were the Turks. Ambassadors were sent north to the Caucasus to establish contact with them. Around that time, the Romans learned that 3 Persian armies were converging from distinct directions. Sharbaraz advanced from Pontus, Shahin from Armenia, and Sharaplakan from Persia. The army was at risk of taking a catastrophic blow from which the Roman state would never recover. Heraclius acted fast. He first went for Sharaplakan and defeated him. After this success, he clashed with Shahin, whom he also vanquished. The last available Persian army, commanded by Sharbaraz, met Heraclius at Lake Van. Campaigning in the Armenian mountains was a matter of initiative and careful maneuvers. This time again, in a surprise attack, Heraclius defeated his Persian rival. The Roman army began its retreat through Mesopotamia. The Persians pursued, taking strategic locations on the path to Anatolia. To break the blockade, Heraclius and his men forced their way through the enemy lines. Eventually, they reached the relative safety of Anatolia, having extracted themselves from enemy territory. Khosrow decided for decisive actions. The Persians reformed 2 armies. The first, under Shahin, was to maintain pressure on Anatolia and protect Persia. The second, under Sharbaraz, marched west. The Sasanians were not alone. They had coordinated themselves with the Avars, who had already broken the latest peace treaty. The objective of the allies was clear: Constantinople. Heraclius chose to bet on his capital's formidable defenses and only sent a portion of his force in reinforcements. In the city, Bonus commanded the troops while Sergius exalted morale. Avars and Slavs launched assaults at the walls but were continuously repelled. In Anatolia, Shahin was heavily defeated by the main Roman army. Separated by the Bosphorus, communication between the Avars and Persians was difficult while supplies were dwindling. With no hope of success, the allies abandoned the siege. Constantinople had withstood its first real test. From now, Sharbaraz only pursued his personal goals, remaining inactive in Syria and not following orders from Khosrow anymore. In the Caucasus, the success of the Roman diplomatic mission with the Turks led Heraclius to meet the Khagan Tsong Yabgu. The negotiations, which involved a future marriage with Heraclius' daughter Epiphania, led to a conclusive alliance. After much celebration, the new allies besieged the city of Tiflis. However, winter was approaching and Yabgu returned beyond the Caucasus mountains, leaving parts of his army with Heraclius. In the west, secular and religious authorities interfered. Theodorus, governor of Sardinia, decided to turn to his administrative superiors in Carthage to resolve ecclesiastical matters within the island. Pope Honorius protested, claiming that it fell under the responsibility of Rome. he sent a letter to the Praetorian prefect of Africa, demanding Theodorus to be punished. From Tiflis, Heraclius changed his strategy. The new objective would be Mesopotamia itself. Khosrow, seeing Shahrbaraz's passivity, ordered General Razad to take action. As he was pursued, Heraclius feigned a retreat back to Anatolia, and suddenly stopped at the battlefield of his choice. Not far from Nineveh, the last army standing between Heraclius and Khosrow was defeated. Mesopotamia was home of friendly Nestorian Christians who provided valuable intelligence. The Romans ravaged their way south until the capture of Dastagard, where they recovered some 300 lost military standards. It is said that Heraclius, in his calls to end the war, wrote to Khosrow the following words: "I pursue and run after peace. I do not willingly burn Persia, but compared by you. Let us now throw down our arms and embrace peace. Let us quench the fire before it burns up everything." The Persians were preparing for a defense of Ctesiphon, destroying bridges around it. Faced with difficult terrain, Heraclius did not go further and went back to northern Iran, which his Turkic allies were already ravaging. Khosrow refused to negotiate, but his prestige was effectively destroyed. He was killed and replaced by his son Kavad, who in turn sent diplomats to Heraclius. It was agreed that the prisoners of war would be freed, that the Sasanians would pay war reparations, and that all occupied territories would be evacuated. Although peace had been established with the Sasanian Empire, the eastern provinces remained under control of Shahrbaraz's army. As for Kavad, he was already dead by September. His son and successor, Ardashir III, was only a child. Heraclius met Shahrbaraz to make the final negotiations. In return for the True Cross and the Sasanian army's evacuation, the Roman army would assist the general in taking power in Persia. To strengthen bonds between the families of Heraclius and Shahrbaraz, a marriage was organized. After 5 years of campaign, the emperor eventually returned to Constantinople, where he emotionally reunited with his family. Celebrations were held for many days, during which the Holy Lance, the Holy Sponge, and most of all, the True Cross were paraded. After 26 years of an intense struggle, the Romans were victorious. The Great Persian War was at an end. Having prevailed over what could be considered the emperor's most dreadful crisis, Heraclius immortalized himself as one of its greatest leaders. Campaigning around the peripheral, yet strategic Armenian mountains, the Romans were able to dictate the course of the war, while the Theodosian Wars showed their worth protecting Constantinople during its first major siege. Now back to the status quo, both states were exhausted and devastated by 2 decades of an all-out war. As Heraclius settled down to begin the long process of empire-wide recovery, he was unaware that pivotal events unfolding in Arabia would, in turn, completely undo his achievements.